Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Formula, which is how to become a franchise broker. But I call it the Franchise Freedom Formula because I don't know anything that is a better opportunity than being a franchise broker, as long as you like the idea of helping people acquire a business. And if that's in your blood and you can, get excited about that, then gosh, I don't think most well, I looked it up. I researched it, what the average doctors and lawyers make and professionals in general. And, it surprises you. The average is not too much more than 300,000 a year. And franchise brokers can make that fairly easy. And the nice thing about it is that you only work a couple hours a week if you want. You can put as much work into it as you want. But the reason I'm so excited about it, and I'm excited to teach others about it, is for that reason, because it's a great quality of life. You can just, work less. But yeah, it's professional, it's interesting, but I've always loved entrepreneurship. And I teach high school girls entrepreneurship. I've mentioned before, many of you, that, we are conditioned to grow up and get a job. And before I died, I wanted to make whatever difference in the world I could, in that I want to change that belief system that how come we don't grow up and become entrepreneurs? You from the very get-go have a great quality of life. So I'm excited to have this opportunity to present this to all of you. And whether you're going to, your thoughts are using it as a full-time job or a side hustle, it is going to give you independence, added income, and that's pretty nice, no matter how you're going to structure. So that's why I call it Franchise Freedom Formula. I sailed a third around the world, including an Atlantic crossing, and I was gone for 7 months, and I still was a franchise broker. So it has allowed me to travel the world and make a really good living. So I'm excited. I know a lot of you guys, and to present this opportunity to you, and you can judge for yourself. So I spent the last 10 years as a franchise broker. And before that, I'm old. So I've had quite an extensive career in high tech. I built a multi-million-dollar business in high tech. I sold that, kind of lost that in a divorce. Then I went into business consulting and healthcare for dentists and veterinarians, which I really loved. That was turning around businesses. And then in 2014, I found this franchise consultant, franchise broker, franchise advisor. They're called all of those are the same term. So it's been a great 10 years, and I poured all my knowledge into this little course for you to just make it easy to get kickstarted. I didn't have anybody to do that, so I kind of had a few hard knocks along the way, just understanding how things work. So I've definitely tried to put everything into this that you would really need to start. Someone you met in the grocery store and they're saying, hey, I'm really tired of this 9-to-5 job. You could really jump in and feel very comfortable in the process of representing them and helping them as a franchise consultant. And, I tell everyone who's looking, especially for a franchise, should use a broker. And you'll kind of know over this 5 weeks that we begin to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, through hard knocks too. Some of them are our clients, and, they experience something that we're just no longer going to represent that franchise, or we're really looking for the very best partners. And the franchise business, it's a partnership. And I've seen some people buy a franchise, and then you got the growth of the franchise, what happens. And that's why this assessment, you will get into later on, it shows you the client if they're cut out based on their criteria to be a more entrepreneur, they're willing to take a risk on someone entering in the marketplace with no installations. That's very high risk. And then there's the middle of the assessment where that's the franchise is in that growth stage. They've maybe sold 100 locations. And so that's that middle stage. And then that high stage is for the person who doesn't have a high comfort level and they want a McDonald's or, they want a Massage Envy that's got thousands of locations. So you're guiding them because you're going to see that in the assessment so that you can do a really good job of guiding them through these 400 franchises. Our job is to, well, I take it pretty serious. So I want to find the very, very best for my clients. I want the lowest investment for the highest return. However, I want them to love it. And I want them to jump out of bed and love their business. And so that's our job. Our job is to be their consultant. Our job is to secure their investment. Some, and you'll learn this, and these investments are 500,000, 300 to 500,000 for brick and mortar. And we know the good and the bad and the ugly. And it's kind of like you can help guide them to the very best. We've got great franchises and we got not so great franchises. And so I don't know, there are some brokers out there, they'll just flip it. And you should be aware of that too. It is a good old boy network. There are some lot of people that, they've been in it for a very long time and they buy the lead and they flip it. And that's them. But I will tell you that I take a lot of pride. I love entrepreneurship. I love finding the best for my clients. And so that's what you're going to be doing as well, is that your service is, or your product is those 400 franchises that you represent. And they are the client. And sometimes I would say most of the time when the clients reach out to me, they don't end up buying what they reached out to get. And if they wanted it, that's great. But sometimes I've got to give them the information that I want to give them so that they can make a really good decision. So that's a long way to say the name is Franchise Freedom Formula, unleash your earning potential, because it is all, for me, it's part of that. But part of it is this is a great career to have a great lifestyle. And you're going to see that because in my whole career of consulting with dentists and doctors and seeing oh my God, veterinarians, you wouldn't believe the money they make. And they work 7 days a week. And it's like they went to school for 8 years. And it's like, and I would go, oh my God. And they got to deal with putting all these dogs down every day. It's high stress. And I spent a lot of time in Fort Collins, Colorado, where there's a big veterinarian college there. And, I went over there, I go, you got to teach some business classes in here. You are not coming to be a vet, you're coming here to be a business person, and they don't like it, So I get pretty excited about the opportunity because out of all the things that I've seen, including, I made the most in my own business. My business did 5 million in 3 years. I was in high tech and that was the most, but I worked a lot harder. So I'm going to give you the data dump over the next 5 weeks of everything that I know. I have to say you're getting this for a steal because I'm going to give you a template for a website with all the content already done on it if you want it. And all you have to do is put your color and your name and you've got a full-blown website. You don't have to develop it until you're ready to. But we'll talk about all of that. But This is called Unleash Your Earning Potential, and that's what I'm super excited to present to all of you guys, because that's what I want. I want this for my meditation students and clients, and a really good quality of life. And it doesn't matter where you live. Like, what's so exciting is Luis is in Mexico. And guess what? He can do this job from Mexico. You can easily do this from Mexico. And I'm excited about that. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what journey you're on, doesn't matter if you're sailing across the Atlantic. You can still be a friend as long as you get some internet once in a while. Okay, so let's quickly, just briefly, so you know which weeks what's going to happen. I want to, right now, this week, we're going to go over just a high level franchise consulting industry overview. But let me just briefly talk to you about what we're going to do next week, week 2. Now, I chose to do week 2 to set up your business, because if you want, you can start getting it set up so that over the next 3 or 4 weeks, maybe you even have a client by then, or maybe, you never know. So I want you to start thinking about some of these things that we'll talk about next week so that you can begin to set up. Some of you may already have an LLC. You can run it under that. You can run it as a proprietorship. We'll talk all about that. And most of all, we'll talk about the day in the life of a franchise consultant, like what you're going to be doing during the day. Week 3 is a big week. We're going to go over lead generation. And the bottom line is that's our job. Our job isn't sales. You don't have to do any selling, really. We're finding the clients for our franchisors. And so I buy leads, and I'm going to, talk about that, but there are other ways to do it if you don't have the marketing money right now to buy leads. But in week 3, we're going to go through all the lead generation options that you have and talking about how we find these clients for our franchisors, and they pay us hefty for it. In fact, their own salespeople make about $2,000 on a sale. And you'll see in the next couple slides, well, I'll wait until I get to it. Do you see what we'll earn? We're going to go over the assessment of the client. Now, one of the assessments is this, it's called a spot on profile. And I'm going to send this to you probably this week. And what I'd like you to do is take the test, take the assessment. And then you're going to be able to know what it is your client is filling out. And you're going to learn how to read this assessment, because if you can get your client to complete this assessment, it's really going to help you, guide you on finding the best fit for them, because it just goes over everything. Right off the bat, it says if they should own a franchise or not, or stay in the corporate world. Talks to you about their values and what's important to them. And there's these splatter dots on it that shows you what values that are high for them that are not getting met right now. And that's what you want to try and satisfy for them. It tells all about their values. It tells all their skills. It says what kind of selling they're good at. I mean, it is so complete. And so I would like you to take it and then read your own and see how it matches up. And then I'm going to give you some video links for their training. This is done by a separate company. And right now I pay for unlimited assessments. And so you could piggyback on that for a while without buying a subscription yourself, as long as I know which one to send it to. Because we don't have a big group here. I should be able to do that. If you want to, you can buy your subscription too. Unlimited assessments is about $145 a month, or $50 an assessment. But this is a super great tool. And a lot of times the client doesn't even really, they didn't even know this stuff about themselves. So it really helps you design the right product, business for them. So we're going to talk all about matching in week 3, and evaluating the assessment and matching the franchise And then the franchise directory. I'm going to try and get this done. It's really hard to do, but what I'm trying to do is put together all the franchises, which it won't be all 400 to start, but these are the ones you represent. And you're going to be able to go to, I'm putting it on a Trello board, and you're just going to go to Trello. You're going to click on the industry. So say it's pets. And then I've listed all the franchises that you can represent that will pay commission. And it'll have a description. It will give you everything that you need to know, how much money it costs, what the royalties are, just every bit of detail will be on there so that you can represent that to your client. And I've got brochures on there so that you'll have brochures to send to your clients. So that's going to be on this directory. And if it's good enough, and it says week 3, I'll show it to you then. Otherwise, for sure by the end. But this has been harder than I thought, trying to do some sort of directory, just so you guys know what franchises that will pay commission. Most of them do, by the way. Most of them do, but still, some of them don't. And especially the bigger they are, they don't. Like Domino Pizza doesn't, McDonald's doesn't, Starbucks doesn't. I mean, they don't use brokers. And then we'll talk extensively about the FDD, which Joy could give us a class on. Anyway, that's the main document. Right, Joy? Yeah, she's an expert. The franchise disclosure document is the Bible. It is the Bible of the franchise, and it tells you everything. I mean, it's a legal document. It is required by state. You'll learn all about that, but it could be as big as 300-400 pages. So week 3, we're going to do that. And then we're going to week 5, and mostly this is communication, because it doesn't seem like it's very big, but it's big. I mean, this is a lot of phone work, and this position, this business, this career is all about relationships. And you really got to understand your client, and you got to know how to be empathetic and use positive languaging and objection handling, although there's not too much because we're not handling the selling. But I'm going to just touch on it because relationships are everything in this position, because in some cases you're going to have a competitive broker. If your client bought a lead, particularly if they clicked on a lead that you advertise, that candidate clicked on other things, and those brokers got that same lead. So now multiple of you are, you're vying in a way, who's going to connect the best with this client. And we'll talk about this in marketing, but I'm always trying to think about how you can do it a little more purple cow. I call it purple cow. I think Andrea is our marketing expert, but how can you be different than the other brokers? And we'll talk about that in marketing. But so week 5 is about that. And week 6, I cut back when I went from $5,000 to $497. Just thinking, how could I shorten it a little bit for people? And I will blend this in with other topics or in our coaching afterwards. But I'm super big on mindset. It's probably the key to being successful. And I sent you out that document. We can talk about that at the end, but mindset mastery for success is everything. You're only as successful as your mind and your thoughts. And so I think it's really, really important that if you want to be successful, really, really successful, you have to look at your limiting beliefs and your thoughts and, get a handle on your mindset. So that was week 6, which we'll have to, because I told you guys it was 5 weeks. So I'll blend it in somehow so that the information still gets disseminated. So that's the 5 weeks. And then we're going to do 2 weeks of group coaching. So if you start digging in and you're ready and you're starting to work your business and you've got questions, then it's like a mastermind. All of us will be there and supporting each other, including me. And, just help each other with getting kicked off in your business. And then I'm available 90 days of mentoring after that. So if you need help, you need guidance, you need to strategize a good franchise for somebody right now when you're learning about all these different businesses, I'm there for you. So, and that's what is entailed in this, which, yeah. Anybody have any questions so far before we dive into our week one? We have a small group, so it probably won't hurt to open up the telephone line if you have a question at all.
I have a quick question, Daphne.
Yeah,
You mentioned there were 2 weeks of like mastermind group coaching. Is that going to be after week 5 or is it going to be strewn in throughout?
after week 5.
Okay, will we just do 2 more Wednesday nights or
I wanted to talk that through with you. I
got
mean,
it?
it might be. I have commitments on Thursday night, but I thought I'd talk it through with you and see what you thought about that. Thinking it might be, but I'm totally flexible. It could even be a couple weeks after if you are getting integrated into what you're doing. But I just want to offer the coaching and the questions and kind of any way that I can help. So I'm just available, and I always love group coaching, helping each other.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Let's dive in. All right. So, for me and my excitement for all of you, and that's what we're here for, honestly, is to make money. And I think this is a great opportunity. So, I'm going to start right up front with the financial freedom that this position will offer for you because it really is unique, I think. You will make more money than a franchise owner. The average franchise makes $250, $300, and they're going to work really hard and they're going to invest a lot of money. You're really lucky because you had a really low investment. The average training for this program is $16,000 and the highest is $28,000, and they take a portion of your money. The $16,000 one doesn't. They just charge you $400 a month, but all the other consultants, they take a percentage, and the money, your franchise money payments come to the company, and then they pay you. And you will be fully trained. You can be one of the best out there, and that placement fee is going to go directly to you, no splits or anything. So the average placement fee that the franchisor pay that they're used to paying is $30,000 if a franchise broker is involved. And some are a little bit less. You're going to find a few, but what you find is, especially the new ones that come in, they don't really want to pay that. And so they come in at 20, 25, maybe, something like that. And then we don't represent them. I mean, and then they feel it, and then they end up increasing it. And it is paid by the franchisor, so your client doesn't have to pay. It's a cost of sale for the franchisor.
Hey, Daphne.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like a percentage, right? On the close or whatever. It's more of a set amount that a franchise broker charges, right?
Correct. It's
General.
not what we charge. It's what they offer to pay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what they offer to pay, and it's just become standard. Bubbly Paws, which I represent, they do 26, 25 or 26, but most of them are 50. I mean, most of them are 30. And it's not a percentage like real estate. And with real estate, right, we're so much, I might as well talk about that right now. I mean, we really are like real estate and management recruiters. However, realtors split it 4 ways, and they work nights and they work weekends and they do open houses and they have to deal with contracts, and they don't even come close to that 30,000 that we make and on a placement. So, and management recruiters, both of those jobs are, the careers are the same. Realtors are matching, their candidates with their dream home, and we're matching a business. And the management recruiter is representing a company, and they've got to go out and find the candidate just like we do. It's the same thing as a management recruiter. I don't know, Mary, are you a management? I can't remember.
No, I'm a marketer.
Marketing. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm a marketing person. Cool. Yeah, somebody I've been talking to was a management recruiter. A lot alike, and LinkedIn is really good for that. And we'll talk about that in the marketing. But the careers are the same, but they don't nearly make what franchise. This is the most hidden career that I've ever seen. Like, people just have never heard of it, really. Okay, so you make an average of 30,000, and I'm a really big believer in failure to plan is planning to fail. So you noticed even what I sent out is that get very intentional about what you want to make at this. If it's a side hustle, even if it's a side hustle, how much do you want to make? And I just, this is what I like to do. It's like, okay, if you want to make $120,000 a year, that's for about 4 placements a year. So you go, okay, I'm gonna target my marketing for 1 a quarter. Now, it's very often that you'll get, if you jump down to the bottom, is that what happens is you make 30,000 for 1 territory. But if your client, the franchisor, is always trying to sell multiple territories. I've got some fitness brands that they always, like, my largest was 10 territories, and I made $250,000 on a Rumble Boxing, a big location in Arizona. It was a lead. I talked to them. I flipped it over to Exponential, and they closed 10 deals, and I received a check within 3 days for $250,000. It's really professional. They pay right away. You will never have to ask for your money. I'm never say never, but so if you want to, I got some late caller in here. If you want to do 120,000 a year, then you're going to sell 4. Now, maybe you want to shoot for 360,000. If you want to shoot for 360,000, then you need to sell 12 per year.
There we
And
go.
hey, Eric.
Hey, I had to fix some stuff.
Okay, you got it. Can you mute that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, hold on.
Okay, cool. So here's the numbers if you want to make 360. So think about this over the week. Like, how much would you want to make? Is it going to be a side hustle? Is it going to be full time? Is it going to be a bridge to, those of you who are already working, which is great. You can bridge until you get that first placement, because you don't have to work full time. You get that full placement, you take that 30,000, and then you can start investing in your marketing in whatever way you choose to do that. I used to have a separate slush fund, like I'd get that, and then I'd set aside my marketing money. So let's say it's 12 per year. That is 12 per year divided by 4 is 3, right? 3. What is that?
Yeah.
3.
It's 4.
Oh, 12
It's
divided by 4 is 3 per quarter.
Yeah, 3.
3 per quarter, you guys. 3 per quarter. That is doable if you got a plan. It is doable if you have a plan, and you got to wait for the pipeline to fill, because or any of you know sales, a business takes 90, 120 days to close. Even if you got a hot lead today, if it's brick and mortar, then it's going to take at least 90 days. And then once the pipeline starts filling, it's a little harder the first year, but year 2, yes. And here's why. What you don't know, what I started to allude to when I started talking about my territory of 10, which was the most exciting thing that ever happened to me, is that they sell multiple territories. And so if it's a three, they call it a 3-pack. So you're going to hear that term. And if they sell them a 3-pack, then your placement's 50,000. And so that's 3, that's a quarter of your work there in that first, and that can happen. And what happens is you start believing in the franchisors that who do that, like Exponential, which is the biggest fitness brand. They sell club Pilates and rumble boxing and row house and stretch, and they got a bunch of boutique fitness. And if you represent them, they will close multiple deals for you. And they are so professional. And I visited them in Los Angeles, and it looks like a Google campus. I mean, they're very successful. They got a big studio down there that they do all their online fitness with, and they're just a great franchisor. And so what happens is we've got our plan, how much I'm going to make, how much I want to sell per quarter. And then you start weighing out different brands and who you want to represent. You talked about that niche. Like for me, I sell a lot in the pet industry, i.e. that's how I got my name, Top Dog Franchise Advisors, is that for a while, I was only selling to, my outbound marketing was the pet industry, which still is huge, right? I mean, people love the pet industry. So you plan this out, think about it. Is this a side hustle or is this going to be a career? And how much would you like to make? Give yourself, at least 120 days for your first one, 3 to 4 months. It can happen sooner, but I wouldn't want to tell you that. And then plan it out. And we're going to work on a pro forma, which I do with my candidates, my franchise candidates, helping them see what they're really going to make. Like, cash flow is so important in a business. And so the reason franchisees don't make it is they're undercapitalized. They give everything to buy this business, and it's really, really tight. And just like us, we'd like to sell something quick, but they just don't get their sales numbers up right away, or their grand opening isn't as strong as they wanted, or they cut back on I've seen this often where they cut back on the real estate location and it doesn't do, what they expected on their grand opening. And so that 3 to 4 months up front, cash flow is super important. So I love working a pro forma if I can, and you'll see that in later week, is just, spreading out what potentially they can earn based on the FTD, what the franchise says that they're going to earn, because the franchises cannot promise them the world. Like, you have to go by that franchise disclosure document. We can tell them other things, but the franchisor is against the law for them to promise them the world. They can only give them the numbers that they disclose in this legal document that they register with the state. We can work different numbers. We can take that franchise disclosure document and we can say, we can work with the franchise and we can say, okay, let's talk about what the earnings are. We can spread that out over 12 months. We can get pretty analytical, but they can really see sometimes in the end, you're really not making what you think you're going to make when you really put it on a spreadsheet and work the numbers. That's why I love the numbers, to see if really what you're going to make as a franchisee. You have a couple other streams of revenue. They're not big, but they're kind of nice. It's a lot like real estate. You're paid a commission for the mortgage, in this case, the funding. So you're working with funding people and you make $1,000 or $2,000 there. And then I didn't put this on there, but I forgot. But the other one is that you can look for people who might want to franchise. And so on a couple of occasions, I go into something, I go, oh my God, one of them was I can't even pronounce the word, Catamaran. I don't know, that board with all the cheeses and food and everything. I don't know how they pronounce that. Anyway.
Charcuterie, I believe is how it's pronounced. Is that what you mean?
What is it called?
Charcuterie board, the
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had to do that for a wedding for someone, and I went in and I had a great experience in this business. And I go, oh my God, have you thought about franchising this? And she had kind of thought about it, but she didn't know anything about it. So we had a conversation. So keep your eyes and ears open. If you have a good experience, you can talk to them. Most of the time, they don't know anything about it, and you can guide them. You don't do the work. All you do is flip it over to the development people, which we're going to talk about. And that's all different, but you can make 20% by just referring to the development people that handle all of that. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Any questions? And that's just, the next slide is just more of that. But any questions on, I like to talk about the money up front, because really this is what it's all about. It's a great career. It takes a couple hours a week. If you do end up buying leads, you know, you might get, I don't know, it's all different, 10, 20 leads a month, and then you're going to call them and have some 1 hour calls. So, you know, it's a few hours a week. So let me stop with that, since that's the money. Any questions? Let me talk about quickly how you're paid. You're paid, no, it's a little bit different with real estate. You're a 1099. The commissions change a little bit, as I talked about. They're mostly $30,000. At the time of the sale, you're going to invoice the franchisor, and at the end of the year, they're all going to send you a W-4 for your taxes. And I already mentioned they're super professional. They pay on time. Unless they're really, really new, emerging brand, they might mail the check, but most of them wire transfer. So you get your placement right away. So it's just no negativity with dealing with your earnings. And they're super great. We're going to talk about this. I mean, you will become really close friends with these development people that at the franchisor. They're super great. Any questions on let's see what's next. Okay, on the money side that you can think of. Thumbs up. It's good, right? I mean, that's why I get so excited. It's just, yes, we got a startup, you guys, but it's just fun. It's fun working with the clients. It's fun getting to know them. It's fun when they buy it, and you know it's going to be a beautiful life for them and for you. Learning about these different new businesses. I really enjoy learning about the new franchises. So I just honor that you even came to listen to this, because you wouldn't believe how many people I talked to who didn't. And I just go, I can't believe that. I really, oh my God. But, you know, there's a reason every one of you are here. Honestly, it is. You were guided. And I know that for me, because I put out that kind of energy, but I'm excited about it. All right, so we'll go to the next slide. I thought I wasn't going to have enough to fill an hour, but it's already 45 minutes after. I've already talked a lot about this, why become a franchise consultant. It's super professional. It's high earnings. You own your own business. You're helping others. You're making a difference. You're making a big difference in a lot of people's lives. And in a lot of cases, if you've got the heart, you're going to sell them the right thing, or not sell them, but you're going to guide them to the right one. You know, I mean, there's nothing that cringes me more than that they're headed over to. Some people are strong headed and they're going to do what they're going to do. If they're going to do what they're going to do, and they know they have all the information, then, you know, that's their decision. But I want to protect that investment, because it's a lot of money. And I have seen many franchisees fail or have to sell faster than they had to, because they were not capitalized enough, or yeah. So I want to make sure that they're capitalized good enough, you know? So lot of benefits on why to become a franchise broker. Oh my God, it's a great, and if you know people, I mean, it's a great side hustle. I know so many people that, you know, they want to be stay-at-home parents or real estate, you know, they flux, you know, and we make more money than realtors. So, well, we'll see what Eric says. But anyway, we make good money. It's great for college kids. I would love college students to do this, the responsible ones. You know, they could have a nice career. I'm an RV nomad. I think RV nomads are great because you just need to have some internet. You could be traveling the world. It's great for a full-time career. I mean, there are a lot of, coaches. I mean, we have a gazillion life coaches and nobody's making any money. So it's great for coaches, I think, and really just a side hustle. If you know, a couple just wants to have some extra earnings in their life. All right, so the role of the franchise consultant. Number one is we are a marketer, and we got a couple marketing people here, which is absolutely awesome. If you're into marketing, this is your gig because that's what it is. Same way with real estate. I mean, real estate people have to find the customer. We have to find the customer. Every business owner on the planet has to find a customer. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to find the customer. And so we just happen to do it for the franchisor. And now that I've told you how much they pay a consultant, you know, and their salesperson, they pay $2,000. They got a salary, but it doesn't equal. And so after you've done this, if you wanted to go out into the franchise world industry, you could get a franchise development position and work for a franchisor. You could also work for a franchisor and still sell. Many of them own franchise. They don't broker, but they do own franchises. And by the way, many franchise brokers end up buying an empire of franchises because your earnings are great and you know which ones to buy, and so they end up buying some franchises as well. So yeah, marketing is it, and you're recruiting for your franchisors and you're looking for clients. So we'll talk about this in the marketing, but you know, you can do it a variety of different ways. You can just focus on a niche, focus on a state. You can go into, you know, matching them up. Just sell. I love selling pets. I like the vacation rental business too. Vacation rental business is one, you'll see that it's the best investment for low investment, high return, and you only need one employee. So it's great for people who want passive investments. They can just, the thing about that vacation rental business right now in the right area, you can do 700 to $1 million a year recurring revenue, which is big. Most franchises, you've got to find the customers every month, but in the vacation rental business, it's recurring revenue. So every month, cha-ching, cha-ching, as long as you're taking care of that customer, is a lot like a gym, a membership, you know, that earnings happens. And I've just never seen the earnings so big. Most franchises make, you know, 250, 300 for brick and mortar. We'll talk about brick and mortar, but brick and mortar, and that, you know, it takes 2 to 3 years to break even. So I'm a big fan of the vacation rental. So first, you're a marketer. Second, you're a matchmaker. You're matching. And depending on how much heart and depending how business consultant you are and life coach you are, like, I really care. Like, I care. And so, you know, you're going to get to know them and you're going to help them and guide them to the best opportunity that you can. And then the last two is so true. You are part life coach and part business consultant. And you can be as much of a business consultant as you want to grab onto. You can just do the marketing and flip the information over to your franchisor, or you can, you know, you can do the performer. The performer takes a lot of work, but I don't know, you're paid well for it. So you're going to figure that out. And sometimes you might do that going more in depth about really help, because, you know, a lot of clients they don't even know anything about business. The biggest client I have there, I mean, franchises, is an engineer We sell a lot of engineers, believe it or not. And engineers make good money and they buy a lot of franchises. Dads buying for their kids. That's really heartwarming. You know, their dad's older and they go, you know, I can't take this home with me. I can't take this with me. And I've sold a 3-pack to a dad that she never asked her dad for anything. She put her kids through college herself. She was a single mom. She's in Nashville and she's a teacher making $50,000 a year. Really tough school, hardly any retirement. And her dad just came in and bought her a 3-pack in Nashville. He wanted her to own all of Nashville for this Zoom room. So, you know, dads do really cool things for their kids. It's you just have all different kinds, but I would say the biggest investor is a lot of engineers. And I'm not sure why. And they're not the best with people. I worked with engineers my whole life and I'm a salesperson. So it's kind of like I always had to have a sales engineer. It was always like, okay, we're going into this account. Zip it. I'll do the talking. Don't you do the talking. But they're buying a lot of franchises. So that's it. That's what makes up the role of franchise consultant. You're mostly a marketing person, but every business is a marketing person. You got to have marketing to find the client. You're a matchmaker. A franchisor is going to do the selling, but what's going on with the client is you're that business consultant and a life coach, because you're going to be asking those questions of, you know, I just was with one, you know, I got a stay-at-home mom, or, you know, a lot about their exit plan. I mean, they might be in their 30s and 40s right now, but you've got to plan for that exit plan. Do you want to buy this franchise and flip it? You know, I mean, it's a great way. I think it's better than real estate as far as quicker. I mean, if you find the right franchise and you build it up in a year or two, you can flip it for 3 times EBITDA. The vacation rental business is a good one for that. Like, get that recurring revenue up, flip it, and sell it for 3 times EBITDA, and you're good. That was an investment. Maybe you don't want to do anything else after that, or maybe you want to buy another franchise. A lot of franchise owners always buy more. So you stay friends, like real estate too. Real estate got a client, they come back. Probably more often they do buy multiple locations. They build what I call an empire. So they buy their first, and then they want to own their territory around them. So they keep buying. And it goes back. You only need, what do we say? 8 to 12 to do 360,000 a year. 12 to do 360,000. To me, that's kind of a magic number. I like that number. Yeah, Andrea's gone. Yeah, I like it. That's a good number. $1 million's better, but I like it. All right. So we'll turn the topic a little bit, and I tell my clients, and they and really just know that they know this, that they've made the decision to become an entrepreneur or a business owner, and there are 4 ways that they can do that. They can start it from scratch. They can purchase a non-franchise business, say like a mom and pop restaurant or something that's not franchised. They could start a multi-level marketing business, which they give you a lot of tools. It's a low investment. I mean, it's a business. They could do that, or they can buy a franchise. And those are their 4 choices. And many times those are what they're thinking about. Really, the number one thing they're thinking about, my clients, are if they want to invest in real estate or this. So that one you want to get to know, because they're usually deciding if they're going to do this or invest in real estate. They don't so much, you know, they know that they kind of want a franchise, but those are their choices. But most of them, they're thinking about that real estate buy. Why franchise? Why do businesses franchise? Got any ideas? It says it right there. The reason franchise is because they want their brand to be national, you know, a McDonald's or a Subway, and they can't afford to do that. You know, it just takes this is what is a franchise. A franchise, I thought it was why. A business arrangement where the franchisor grants the license or their trademark or their business to an individual to run under their brand, and they charge them a royalty. So that's what is a franchise. Real quick, I'm just going to run through the history, but the history goes back to 1851. I don't know, you're all so young, you probably don't remember the Singer sewing machines, but that was the first in 1851. 1888, Coca-Cola was the first to do franchises. And then really famous is Kentucky Fried Chicken. And that was in 1892. I just can't believe it's that long. And he started it when he was in his 70s. This is amazing. Early 1900s, A&W Root Beer. I don't know if you can remember that, but I do. And you drive up to A&W Root Beer and they put that little thing on your window and you get that really good cold root beer. Those were in the early 1900s. And Howard Johnson established the first restaurant you've probably eaten in, like a Denny type Howard Johnson. So that was like in the early 1900s. And then, of course, the biggie is McDonald's. I cannot believe it was 1954 when the first McDonald's was, and that's really the big one is McDonald's. And then Holiday Inn was the first franchise hotel chain. And then an amazing story about Subway. I mean, 1971, Subway started franchising and they had 39,000 Subways. And in 2023, they were bought by a holding company, the owners of Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin Robbins. And it was $9 billion, I think they paid for that Subways. And then they're planning to add another 23,000. So it's really a success story, Subway for sure. And then in the late 80s, then it was just FedEx got into it. And in 1985, that's when the International Franchise Federation or the association was formed. And the franchise business really started to grow. And a lot of laws enacted. And that's when it got really active, when the association was what do you call it? Anyway, it was started. In 1997 was Starbucks. Starbucks for so long was company owned. And we talked about that. Many people can't build a network of businesses, but Starbucks did. But they did do a little bit more franchising in 1997. So it's a huge industry. It's $800 billion globally that is valued. It has tons of sectors, which we're going to talk about, creates millions of jobs. It's a big, big, big industry, and it's booming right now as well. Why do businesses convert? This is where I thought the slide was, but they want to build their business. They want to grow. They want to have a big brand name. And so they can't really afford to do that. So what they do is they grow with other people's money. And so they say, well, you can invest this X amount of money and you can have one of the locations. And so that's how it works. They just low risk for them, the owner. It's using other people's money. They've got shared responsibility. The client knows the local territory. So there's just a lot of reasons for somebody to convert to a franchise. Some of it do really, really good. Now, I tell you this because if you run into somebody that wants to become a franchise, just know that you got to evaluate the business. They've got to be multiple years in business, successful business. They've got to show that they've got a proven model. And then they go out and they've got to get an FDD developed. And this is a very standard uniform document, as you're going to see over the weeks. And they get their legal support. They really have to, what's that book on systems? You got to build the system. And if you can build the system and the operations manual, you got to be able to tell them, like McDonald's, like how many pickles is going to go on that hamburger and the bun, and everything has to be, it's always the same, right? And you go to every McDonald's, it's always the same. And so that's what they've got to be able to develop before they could launch it as a franchise. They're going to identify their market and they'll just start thinking about who's going to be their franchisee. And then what they're going to do They either do this themselves, which most don't, and then they hire one of these companies, which is our franchise development companies. Now you want to know these names because these are the bigger names, and they're the ones that represent multiple franchises. And these guys are going to have multiple brands. So you're going to see this. Let's take them one by one. Brand one is one of my favorites. They are so professional and they represent a whole bunch of brands. So this brand one company or our development companies, they can either do all of that work that was up front that I just showed you in the last slide and the sales and marketing, or they can do all the upfront work and then the franchisor does all the sales themselves. It's a combination. It depends on the agreement between them. But if you were to represent any of these brands, and these are all your brands right now, you could sell Dog Wizard, 1-800-Stripper, Dermamed Spa, The Waxing City. I mean, they're all here. Gutter Shutter, Canine Resorts is like the Four Seasons of the dog boarding business. It's really beautiful. Clean Eats. All of these right now are brands that you will be representing. But when you represent them, you're going to be talking to brand one most of the time. So it's a combination of know that that's somebody that you can refer somebody, which isn't the major part of what you do. But these are the people. Brand one's going to be the one to present, like we'll have people come to us and present their brand, and that's who will do it. Brand one will tell you about Dog Wizard. Dog Wizard is a new mobile franchise. So brand one is my favorite. Michael Mudd is the president. They are so first class. They are so professional. They're just a great, great organization. And they treat their franchisors, their franchise brokers really well. Now, Franchise Fastlane, run by a woman, I believe, this development company is booming. It's just booming, and they just bought, this next slide is Raintree, and they just bought these guys. So they manage all these brands, and these are all brands that you represent right now today. And there's a lot of them. My favorites in that lower left-hand corner, which is Brothers Who Just Do Gutters. These guys, it's a low investment, home-based. They do like $1 million. They say, I haven't seen it yet, but they break even on their grand opening because the way they do the marketing, and they have their stuff pre-sold before they even open. So they've got a really good marketing program for their franchises. And I've talked to a lot of their owners on LinkedIn. They love their franchisor. So they represent Brothers Gutters. Game Day, I love. Game Day is new. They are a man's testosterone testing, and it looks like a jock gym. I mean, it's really cool looking, and it's in the medical arena, and they're doing really, really well. A couple million in top line sales. Okay. So just know that most of all here is you're going to be talking to the development companies when you represent these products, these franchises. Raintree just bought them. So they've got Teriyaki Madness, which is a really big one. Jamba Juice does really well. British Swim School does too. Houndstown is a boarding screen. They just do screens in your home. Home services do really well, by the way. Yeah, question?
So these franchise companies, do they do their own advertisement as well, or?
Yeah, they do. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They do.
So they're always open for more business, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
for them to, okay, but
And they have limited funds too, right? I mean, I've seen it. I'm pretty intimate with quite a few, and I mean, they don't have a lot of money to spend on marketing. Believe it or not, and they don't want to. And we're going to talk about, the candidates have to pay 1% of their earning top line to the franchise, and I mean, it goes into a fund that they're supposed to be using nationally. They say that's to build the brand nationally. And it's always a contention with the franchisees because they want to make sure, and I don't blame them, that franchisees are using the money, and sometimes they have to put it in a separate fund. They have to show that that money is being spent on marketing, because the franchises, sometimes they have a national branding fee and an advertising. They have their own local advertising that they have to do. So that's a lot of money, and the franchisees want to keep them honest about it. But yeah, they're doing their marketing too. And you're going to find, if you were to buy leads on the portals, some of them, like I used to advertise Rumble Boxing, but Rumble Boxing decided that they wanted to do it direct. So once they want to do it direct, they take it back. And it's really good for startups. If you find a brand that, and we'll talk about that in the leads. I'll just save that for the leads because I could talk all night. And I want to get through this for you. Okay. The components of the industry, these are the pieces, these are the people that you'll be interfacing with and the things that's going on in our industry. We talked about the franchisors and the franchisees. We call them ZORs and Zs a lot of times, short for franchisor and franchisee. So they're the owners. We've got the franchise brokers, consultants, advisors, coaches. They call them all four, but most of them call them brokers and consultants. You have the franchise development companies, which is what I just showed you. Some of the companies that, and I hope by the end of the class that I'll have these resources for you. Those are just 3, but I'm trying to gather them all, or as many as I can for you, so that you know who the development people are, not just those 3. You've got the association, the International Franchise Association. They also have a big trade show every year. And then you have your lead generating companies. You have quite a few people who will be trying to sell you leads. Some of them can be as high as $100 a month, and $100 a lead, and they're mostly calling, and they say that they're qualified leads. They do the calling and they send the client to you. So that's a lead generation company. And then the advertising portals are the Franchise Direct, Franchise Opportunities, Franchise Gator. Those are the portals that if you go to Google and you enter franchise, those are going to come up on the page 1. And that's where we advertise, and that's where they click. And then that's where it ends up in your franchise, in your email. And then you've got the franchise consulting membership networks, which is, in a way, this is a small one, like just what we're doing here. We've got some big ones that they charge $16,000 for their training, and it goes up to 28. Like FranServe charges $25,000, and they take a percentage. That's the company that the leads the payments come to them, and then they pay you. Not going to be any different of training. I know quite a few people who have been through it. Any questions so far? I got to stop by and check in with you guys. Okay. Lots and lots and lots of sectors. So you can either represent and get really professional at one sector. Like I represent pets a lot. I've done a lot of health and fitness, wellness, home services, senior care, food, cleaning, consulting, real estate. There's a lot of different sectors, and they break down. So there's marketing, entertainment, printing, travel, technology, financial services, education and training, automotive, personal services, and retail. There are a lot of opportunities. Like I think there's like 400 or 500 different franchises that go into each one of those sectors. And then they break out, like in pets, you've got grooming, you've got boarding, and you've got training. And in health, you got the gyms and you got fitness centers. In wellness, you've got a lot of hormone replacement stuff, spas, alternative medicine. In senior care, which is big, senior care is a big vertical sector. They've got I don't know why that says remodeling, but that's a mistake. Oh, that's home services. Okay, senior care, assisted living, home health care, senior services. So just know within the sectors, it breaks down into a lot of different verticals: real estate, property management, real estate brokerage, and children's education. So there's just anything your client wants, there's probably a franchise for it. Retail, personal services, automotive, just a ton. Okay, this is a big one. There are two kinds of franchises that they fall into. One is what I call brick and mortar, which is your retail, Jamba Juice or something that's got a retail front, and home based. Your average brick and mortar, as soon as they say they want something retail, it's pretty much $350,000 to $500,000 to open their doors or more. I mean, restaurants, I just learned of a new really hot product. It's a waffle kind of pancake thing, but they do a lot, millions, but it costs millions to get in. But on average, $350,000 to $500,000 once they make that investment. That's for brick and mortar. And home base is $45,000 to $150,000. Big difference. This is why it's so important to do the analysis for your client, because some of them could take 2 years to pay this back. That's a lot. And usually investors want it quicker than a couple year payback. So brick and mortar is going to be, so right off the bat, it's 350. You're going to ask your client, are you going to finance this? You're going to start talking the money. And one of the problems is that on the portal, I really have a problem with this, because on the portals, as soon as you go there, it'll say cash investment needed 80,000. And people think that that is what it costs to buy this business. And it's really deceiving. So they click and you pay your $50, because as soon as they click, they pay. And really it's 350,000. And so they didn't know that. And, then you got to talk about the financing. And I would say most people finance their franchise. My dad that bought for the teacher, he paid cash, but most of them there's a whole financing question going on there. So brick and mortar, $350 or $350,000 and up, right away. You can zero in on, what kind of capital that they have. And home base is a lot less. And I will tell you right now, home base can make more money than brick and mortar. Home base can break even faster, way faster. Like Brothers Gutters, they can break their money back. It's about $85,000 a territory. Sometimes they want 2 territories. They can break it even in the first 6 months. For investors, that's a really big deal. Paying back your money is a big deal. So you're really going to have this conversation pretty quick, which is, do you want home-based or brick and mortar? And the money kind of speaks to it, $350,000 to $500,000 or more, or $45,000 to $150,000. Now the vacation rental business, depending on the territory, it's like $45,000 to $100,000, and you literally can do, $500,000, $600,000 or more after the first year recurring revenue. You would just be breaking even on brick and mortar. Home base, so it means you work from home. Brothers Gutters is considered home base, but they got their trucks out there, and you've got the trucks at some location. Lower monthly overhead. The brick and mortar, what kills them is that they've got to do that retail. And once you got to pick retail space and build it out, that's the major investment, is building that out. And that's a 5-10 year commitment. So I've seen these franchisees buy, and then they don't make it, or they didn't do it the capital right, and so they still are committed to that 5-10 year lease until someone else buys it. So it's very, it's a lot to think about, and you're guiding on that. Now, on the other hand, brick and mortar has very high visibility, right? Home base, you don't see it every time I go to the grocery store. So you have to weigh out the advertising, which doesn't come close, but still, you're heavier on the marketing side on home based. And so your clients really want to dig into what's the marketing program, what do you've got set, how fast am I going to start generating money. So faster ROI on the home based, less advertising on the brick and mortar, because most of them, the question is, and I'll say it a lot of times talking about territory, which is there a Whole Foods or an Orange Theory there? Because if there is, then you can probably get a territory of a franchise. That is kind of what people base it on. So this is really important. Is this business going to be home-based versus brick and mortar? And you're going to educate your client, educate them on these pros and cons. I mean, I'm always tend to move people towards home-based because of the investment, you know? Any questions on that?
There's a lot more like higher advertisement though, right? It's like, so it just depends on what they're willing to do, right? Like fitting them, right? If they're going to be good at doing their own advertisement or investing in their advertisement if they're home based. And you have the brick and mortar. Well, they're most likely in a shopping center where they're more visible, right? So it's easy, just a lot of flow. So there's some goods and bads for both, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, you can spend a lot of advertising money for 500,000.
Mhm.
But it is true. And your brick and mortar still have to advertise. You still have to advertise, but you don't have to advertise as heavy. But I will tell you that most everybody is really bad at marketing. They don't want to spend the money. And I've seen it with my Zoom rooms. I mean, that thing, yeah, it's the biggest problem for franchisees is marketing. It's really everyone. But, we have to find clients, they have to find clients. And yeah, everyone's looking for the client, but you can do the pro forma on both and really figure out how fast that payback is, or how fast, what's that cash flow going to look like. I like putting all those numbers out there because even in my high tech business, I always working on a pro forma. It's like, all right, if I want to do $1 million a year, how much do I have to sell to do that? And we're going to do that on a pro forma for ourselves. Like it's easier for us because if you want to make 360,000, you just plot out that, those 12 units. When are you going to do that? What's going to be the expenses? Because there are some expenses on marketing. I spent a lot on marketing last year. So you're going to weigh that out. Any business, you just weigh that out. What are the sales? How realistic can I make what I say I'm going to make or think I'm going to make? Is anyone else doing it? Yes. Okay. How much are you doing? And then what are the realistic expenses? And look at that cash flow, because the cash flow, not only franchises, cash flow can kill you. Cash flow is the number one reason businesses go out of business. They're not looking at that cash flow. So you want to do that for your clients. You want to, show it to them. I think I have a couple more. Oh, okay. Let's see. What do I have? 2 more slides. Okay. The terminology is important, but I'll go through this. Okay, we know what the franchisor is. These are all the words that you're going to hear a lot of. You're going to hear more of it over the week. So I'll just zip through here. But there's the ZOR and the Z. You know who those are, and the franchise broker. You know about the FTD. You just know of it. It's the main document of a franchise, the legal document, and we're going to learn more about that. The franchise agreement is located in the back of the FTD. And that's the agreement that they sign when they're ready to finally buy the franchise. The franchise fee, every franchise charges a franchise fee. On the average, it's $49,500. Most all of them, just like the commission they pay us. Royalties are the fee, the franchise agreement, the franchise fee, the royalty fee. There's always a royalty, kind of 6, 7, 8% is what they have to pay every month off their top line. It's not after expenses. So you're going to see one of the words here is gross sales. They have a cash register or point of sale, and they draw the money out every week, usually automatically. So they get their money, the franchisors. So that is the royalties. Initial investment, the term initial investment is everything that they need to open their doors, and that's listed in the FTD, which you're going to see. Liquid capital is how much money does the candidate have that they can liquidate cash. So that goes into when a franchisor is looking at their candidate. And by the way, it's kind of the franchisor is interviewing the franchisee, and the franchisee is interviewing the franchisor. But you have to be invited to join a franchise kind of thing. I guess you could call it invited, but they're each interviewing each other. Like the franchisor can say, no, we don't think it's a good fit. The franchisee, of course, can say no. And what I tell my clients is that every step forward is a safe decision. You can say no all the way to the end, because you learn more, you learn more, you learn more. And I'm going to go through that selling cycle of the franchisor. So they keep moving forward. And then they, even up to the discovery day, what you're going to learn, they can say no, because even in the validation, there's a validation fee where, you start talking to clients and you go, no, they didn't validate. And so it drops out and you start again. Master franchise. A master franchise is someone who buys a territory and he sells franchises within his territory, and he gets a percentage of the franchise fee and the royalties. That's what a master is. You're going to hear that term. An area developer or a regional, it's called, like my guy that bought 10 Rumble Boxing, he's considered, it is also called a multi-unit owner. He owns all of the locations. That's an area developer. Sometimes they call it regional. Sometimes they call it a multi-unit franchise. That he owns all of the territories. Franchise territory is just that. They carve out exactly what your location is going to be, and they put that in the franchise disclosure document. The discovery day, it's just the weirdest word, but that's what they call the last step of the cycle, where you go out, and before COVID, you always went to the franchisor's location and you see what it is you're going to buy. And they really would roll out the red carpet. It was really a big deal. But ever since COVID, like all customer service, they really back off on making the red carpet. But sometimes they're even done online. I still think my Grand Welcome Vacation Rental does their discovery online, and that's meeting all the leadership. You really want to meet these people. Like, who am I going to be dealing with? Who am I calling when I want to talk about marketing? Do they care about me? How are they the type, you want to feel they want to, when you're talking to your client, all of this is to tell you so you can educate your clients. They're interviewing them, they're their partners, and sometimes they don't treat their franchisees like they should. I mean, it can get, and they find out late, that's why brokers know, and we will usually tell, and we wouldn't recommend that brand. So the discovery day is the last day, and I'll go over all this again. I'm going to zip through this as it's getting late, but the last step. And then usually when you go on that discovery day, it's all the way down. You went yes, 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 yes through the cycle. And then they kind of assume that if all goes well there, you will sign that day and pay the franchise fee. Or you leave maybe for a day or two, but you're going to give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down after the discovery day. Default is just that. There are a ton of terms that we're going to see in that franchise agreement, and some of them get pretty serious and will default on you. And that just means you lose everything once they default. And they can not do what they're supposed to do. They have the agreement, they're supposed to do what they're supposed to do, and then they have to give them some warning. But I have seen it where the franchise defaults, and you will lose your investment at that point. If you don't follow, you have to follow the plan. That's the pros and cons of buying a franchise. There's a lot of pros, but the con is that, you have to follow what's outlined in the FTD. So you want to take a really good look at it, and you want to give it to your attorney, and you want to review that. Acknowledgement of receipt means that the FTD is a very important document, and the government requires that you give this document to a potential candidate. So they sign a DocuSign, and they have to keep it for 14 days, and they can't move any faster than 14 days. They have to take that time. They can take longer, but they can't push a sale through any faster than 14 days. And that acknowledgement of receipt is when they sign the DocuSign, and 14 days after that is the period in which they could then, if they wanted to buy then, they could. But they've got to wait 14 days, and they also will have that opportunity to take it to their attorney. We will always recommend, as a franchise broker, always recommend that they send it to a franchise attorney, because it's its own unique entity, and attorneys that know franchises can really help your clients better than just a straight attorney. The initial training is just an outline of the training that they're going to get, and you really want to dig into that too. You want to advise your client to really understand how you're going to be trained. Don't take it lackadaisical. You're going to learn how to run your business. And so that's what the initial training is. The advertising contribution we talked about, that's that usually 1% that goes back to the franchisor, and they're supposed to spend it on the advertising funds, system-wide advertising. So it's not just in your area, but it's system-wide, and it varies by contract. The cash investment requirement, that one, like I said, the portals advertise that is not what buys the franchise. The cash investment is what the franchisor says you have to have in cash. Like, they want you to have some liquid cash in this deal, not just all financed. Company owned is in the FTD. It's going to show company owned stores and franchised stores. And some of them are company owned. They're both. Business brokers are most franchises that are selling after you buy a franchise is handled by a business broker. Sometimes they're just no money in it. I mean, most of the time they're losing money. It's hard to sell a business that's losing money. The franchisor helps them. A lot of times something for sale is bought by another franchisee, especially if it's making money. But a lot of times a business broker, which is a real estate, more the commercial, they have a license, and they sell the franchises that are already a franchise. It's handled by them. It wouldn't be handled by us. Although they do, some of them will pay us about $20,000 if we find one. It's hard to find one if it's not making money. The franchise disclosure law is just what I said, that they've got to have that legally given to them and make sure that they understand the rules of franchising, all the ramifications and terms in that contract. The franchise manuals are they get operating manuals and training manual. We got a typo on that. Franchise term, there is a term to the agreement, and you'll see this in the FTD that you will have a renewal period, and sometimes they don't have to renew you. Sometimes they don't have to renew, and sometimes the franchisee doesn't want to renew. But that's quite an investment there if they don't on either part, right? So sometimes they end up selling instead. Franchise advisory board. Holy cow. I think that is so needed. A group is so much more powerful than a single person. And the franchisor can get pretty powerful if he doesn't have a group of franchisees working together. And one thing that I have seen lately is that the franchisees get together, and maybe it's because of social media and Facebook, and they can get that, but they start talking and they start, they start as a group. And then as a group, it's much more powerful to get something done at the franchisor. So this applies more to the franchisor, but just know what they are. Sometimes they have an attorney, they have a group together, and this way it's a whole group saying to the franchisor, hey, we're not happy about blank, blank, blank. And as a group, we want that to change. Otherwise, the franchisor just kind of takes over. Franchise salesperson is also known as the franchise development person, which is going to be your contact. And on every one of those in that Trello board I give you, it'll have who that contact is. And that's another word for their inside salesperson. Gross sales we talked about. That's the top line sales. Liquid capital, I think I have this on twice. Net worth. You got to know what net worth is. So net worth is, and they're in the franchise requirements, it'll say, we want you to have $700,000 of net worth. And so net worth just means that you take all the assets minus all your liabilities, and that's your net worth. So sometimes even clients don't know how to calculate your net worth. Opening costs are everything that it costs to open that business, and the expenses for 90 days is the opening cost that your client will have to pay. And so that comes in handy on the pro forma to be able to plot all that out. Like, okay, what are all the money that I'm going to write out of that checkbook? Then there is, the registration states. So there are 15 states that require registration by the franchisor. So no, I'll give that to you guys. We don't have to go over it, but just know that those franchisors have to register with the state. They have to send in their FTD. Where that comes into play for us is that when they send that in, they go black. And that means they cannot talk to us. They cannot talk to the client. You have to wait. I don't know why this is, but there's no communication during this black period. So know that those 14 states register their FTD, and every year they have to re-register. When you have a new franchise that's just coming out, what happens is they sell their territories, or all those states that are non-registered. So those they can sell right away, and then they have to wait for those 14 states to register. So they can still have a pretty good business and launch without it, but just know once you start doing your territory checks to see if the territory is available, which we'll talk about later, sometimes the territory is not available because it's a non-registered. They're non-registered in the state. They're waiting for that to come back. And then there's state franchise laws. Just know that in the back of the FTD, some of them have specialized pages that'll say Michigan State, and it just something specific that applies to the state. Site selection is the site, just that. After you buy your franchise, your brick and mortar business, then you go into real estate development, you get a commercial realtor, and you start looking for your space. And a lot of times the franchisor is the one that has their commercial, they work really closely with you, and they have to approve the location. They know pretty well what's going to do well and what's not. And, they've got some commercial real estate people that can help you locate your franchise location. And then the last one is the SBA guaranteed. You're going to learn about all the financing. We'll have that presentation by one of the finance people, but just know the term. It's really big. It's probably the biggest one that most people get a loan is an SBA loan.